Alex Fraser. I'm running for Vice President with One Husky. So for those of you that don't really know me, kind of in for a little surprise tonight in the fact that this is the first time I've ever actually written out a speech. Usually I like to kind of wing it along the way and just become very knowledgeable about the topics I want to talk about. But today, I'm not talking about myself. I'm not talking about my platform. Instead, I'm talking about a good friend of mine. One that's a lot smaller in stature, but has a huge heart. That is my good friend and presidential candidate, Daniel Wynn. So to give a little background on Daniel and my friendship, it goes back to senior year. We were both actually selected to be Coca-Cola scholars, and we flew over to Atlanta together. And this is kind of the funny story that I think a lot of you can relate to. It was 6 a.m. in the morning. I get to the airport, flying over Atlanta, clearly tired, not energized, ready to sleep on the plane. And I see this little guy running around with an FHS sweatshirt on. And I was like, oh my gosh, if this guy doesn't come up to me. Sure enough, runs on over. Hey, I'm Daniel Wynn. I'm from Franklin High School. Are you a Coke scholar as well? First thoughts in my head. First of all, where in the world does this guy get this much energy? It's 6 a.m. Second thought is, I better not be sitting next to him on the plane. I'm trying to sleep. Sure enough, he was 12A, I was 12B. As you can assume, I didn't sleep the rest of that plane ride. But one of the interesting things, and something I really and truly value about Daniel, is his ability to be so friendly and outgoing that in that short amount of time that I sat there talking to him, I was surprised by the time we landed that we'd only known each other for a few hours. He's so personal, so kind, so genuine. It was someone that I wanted to associate myself with. And, as I'm sure a lot of you can guess too, during that weekend in Atlanta, he managed to meet every single person within the Coca-Cola Scholars group and add them on Facebook before he left. Hence the 3,000 whatever friends he has, or whatever it is. And with that being said, I have a little prop I'd like to show you guys of Daniel and I when we were in Atlanta. It's a picture that my mom helped me dig out of the, bundles and bundles of pictures we have. So for those of you that don't know too, Daniel's backup plan is to be working for GQ later on. So this is us with our little GQ pose going on. A few of the things you'll notice, I had lost a few pounds. I put on a few since then. Same with Daniel. We also had a lot more self-confidence with the pictures and stuff. But no. Going on from there, one of the things I also very value about Daniel is he's fearless. He's not afraid of rejection. He's not afraid of failure. He's not afraid to be told he is wrong. He's going to go out and stand up for what he believes in 100% of the time. And that is something that speaks so much of someone's character. Sometimes we see he has all this stuff on Facebook, always posting, or social media all over it. He might be introducing himself to people he doesn't know. But isn't that what we want in ASB president? Don't we, or ASUW president? Reverting back to high school, sorry. No, in all actuality though, don't we want someone that's friendly and outgoing, someone that's highlighting all the accomplishments and programs that all of its RSOs, entities, and enterprises within ASUW are accomplishing? Don't we want someone that reaches out to all the other leaders on campus, whether he knows them or not, and welcomes them in and congratulates them on what they are doing? Don't we want someone that is personable, outgoing? Don't we want someone like Daniel Wynn? Going on, Daniel has been very involved since a young age. In high school, he served as a House Congressional Page for Jim McDermott in Washington, D.C. He became ASB president, which is, all right, I got ASB right this time, right? Awesome. Then went on to work for Mayor Greg Nichols. From there, he went and took a road trip from Seattle to Georgia to Tennessee to Mississippi, the entire time studying the civil rights movement. Coming to the University of Washington, that involvement never wavered. As a freshman, he became a member of Sigma Phi Epsilon. He then went on to become an orientation leader. His sophomore year, he became a mentor in UW Leaders, and then ended up running on a successful campaign and becoming your Director of Community Relations of ASUW. Daniel is driven. He wants to succeed. But what I think is most important, and this is a quote that I've always held dear to my heart, it's by Jack Welch, former CEO of GE. Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is about growing others. Daniel is that kind of leader. Daniel wants to make everyone better, and he will make everyone better. Once again, Alex Fraser running for Vice President, and Daniel Wood will be coming out here in just a sec. Thank you.
All right, so as you might assume, I'm running with Huskies now. My name's Ada Welder. I'm running for Vice President, like I said, with Huskies now, but more specifically for today, with Michael Coots, who you'll see in just a minute. Before I get started, for those of you who don't know, last year there was a presidential debate that had a talent section, which unfortunately was slashed this year. So Alex and I have coordinated a dance just for Maxine right up front here, so we can move to the middle here. That's all we got. That's all we got. But I did promise Maxine a dance, so I just wanted to make sure that happened. That was really more for Maxine's sake. I liked seeing the blood drain from her face. Now I guess I'll cater to the rest of you folks who are here. So like I said, my name's Ada. I met Michael Coots freshman year. Alex and I kind of coordinated last night, decided that we wanted to be a little bit more casual today, so I promise I'm not copying. We met in Haggett Hall Council. We were both, he was the senator and I was on the executive board as the assistant director of operations. And we got along all right. You know, he was probably one of the first people I ever met on campus. That is, until I decided that I also wanted to be a senator. And so I was kind of encroaching on his territory. In Haggett People's Council, we had these fantastic debates. For freshmen, I don't know how much of it we actually knew what we were talking about, but we loved debating back and forth, and I think it was a great way for us to be able to kind of show both sides of the argument on everything. We almost always came to the same conclusion on things. We just had different ways of getting there, and that's what kept things so exciting. Fast forward a year to about this time last year. We had worked together on the Huskies United campaign freshman year, and we were now going head-to-head to run against each other in the battle of a century, the race for Director of University Affairs. I was really nervous to run against Michael, someone who was so qualified, who was so passionate, who loved everything that he was doing, and honestly, completely genuine. It's a little off-putting for some people when you first meet him, because it's weird to meet someone who's so transparent. You know exactly what he's thinking and he's going to tell you exactly what he means. And that's a fantastic quality. It's one that I've tried to learn a lot from him. When we were running together, I did end up losing against him, as we now know since he's currently on the board. But I was genuinely happy to lose to him. And that sounds like something really kind of bullshitty that you hear like a year later, you know, oh yeah, man, I was so glad to lose against you. But it was something that, you know, through my tears on election day, I was actually saying, where's Michael? I want to congratulate him because I knew he was going to do a phenomenal job, and that's something that he's done. This fall, when we started talking about running together, it was really cool to get to see that we had the same vision for the association, but different ways of getting there. And that kind of was a theme that's continued throughout this entire campaign. When we were putting together our ticket, we wanted to make sure that we were reaching from all sides of campus, to make sure that we had debate going throughout the entire campaign and into the board next year. And I think that we were really successful in that. Every day when I talk to Michael about our ticket, I am beyond excited to move into next year with him and with our other 6 candidates. It's something that it's hard to explain, and it sounds really cheesy, but I genuinely feel excited every single day when I get to see all of our candidates up there. When I get to see everybody out in Red Square, it's amazing to see a group of people come together with the same vision of the association, but with different talents, different skill sets, and different backgrounds. So with that, I guess I'll leave the rest of the debate up to our presidents. Thank you for your time, and sorry, Maxine, about the dance number.
All right, thank you very much to our vice presidential candidates. And audience, thank you very much for coming out tonight and paying attention through Twitter and such. And I'm going to ask all of you to respect one rule, which is hold your applause throughout the remainder of the event, except for right now as we welcome both of our presidential candidates, Michael Coots and Daniel Wynn.
Daniel's sticking true to his intro.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everyone, for being here. It's an honor.
Thank you, candidates. We're going to get started right away. You guys have a folder in front of you, and we've got a lightning round we're going to start off with. So you've got 3 signs in your folder: agree, disagree, and neutral. So we're going to ask you a series of questions, and you're going to hold up either your hold up your sign, and then at our discretion, we may ask you to explain your position on it, okay? And if we do ask, you'll have 30 seconds. So the first question is, do you agree that there are too many white males on this panel in front of you? All right.
That's a good answer, Mike.
Was that a real question there, Chris? Can I explain myself?
Yeah, they're not all that fun. All right, the first real question. I support a tobacco-free campus. Okay, I was worried about including the neutral card, but so Daniel, could you explain a little bit about why you chose neutral on this issue?
Yeah. First off, Kate Cole, just to give a little backup reminder, or a little more background knowledge. Kate Cole first came up to me as the Director of Community Relations and asked me to help get more forward progress on this resolution that we talked about so passionately yesterday at the Student Senate. We had Senator Doe propose the resolution to the Student Senate where it failed. I agree that we needed to make forward progress in terms of making our campus more healthy, but I also think that we also need to take a look at our current smoking section.
Yes, and one additional rule is when timer goes out, our folks from Rainy Dog, thank you Rainy Dog for being here, by the way, they will mute this. Better than Ryan, thank you. When the timer hits 0, your microphones will be shut off. So consider that like Oscar playoff music. You are done. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next question. The ASU dub is viewed in a positive light by the average student.
Next question is, President Michael Young has built a positive relationship with the student body.
So I'd like to ask a follow-up. I'm sorry, Dana, for picking on you, but we'll split it out. I just saw on Facebook you posted earlier a picture with President Michael Young. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more in 30 seconds in your answer to why you disagree and your position there.
Yeah, you know, I think President Michael Young is fairly new to this campus, and I think what it can be done is a lot of progress in terms of working with our student groups. I mean, working with you, Evan, you and I have had multiple conversations that our current university president doesn't really listen to the student voice. This is why next year as your ASUW president, we need to make sure that we have a unified voice on issues so we are heard at all of those decision-making levels.
Michael, do you want to answer that question as well?
Sure. I think the question was more about what President Young has done. And I think one thing that I would point out that I was not happy about is earlier this year, he seemed to be taking a pretty strong stance in support of differential tuition. So obviously that's something that the student body did not support. And I think that we need to have more discussion with President Young on these major issues and make sure that we're coordinating more and so that we can be more effective, especially in Olympia.
All right, next question. President Young and Provost Casa should receive a salary increase with faculty members this year. Thank you. Next question. I support USAS being added to the STAR system.
Having ASUW elections during Greek Week every year gives Greeks an unfair advantage in the process.
Let's get into this one. Daniel.
All right. As a member of the Greek community, I don't think it's unfair at all. You know, every year it said that members of the Greek community, it's unfair, but I say that students are generally interested in ASUW elections and are also educated on the issues and policies, and having students come out to an event that celebrates that community, our community, that's a great way to get students involved too. Just because it just so happens to fall on that day doesn't mean that we should overlook the fact that students within the Greek community are
The ASUW's most important role is to build community on campus.
Mr. Coos, can we get some context on your answer?
Yeah. So I don't think it's appropriate to prioritize the roles of ASUW necessarily. So that's why I chose neutral on this question, because I think that all the things, the major things that we take on in this association are extremely important. So prioritizing them is not necessarily a good thing. I think that different members of the student body would answer this question differently. Different students value different things from their association, but it's not our role to determine what our best service is. So.
Thank you. ASUW tends to be too partisan when it comes to legislative affairs.
How about Daniel?
I think our ASUW has worked really well in terms of being bipartisan, and you can see that in our current legislation, working with House Bill 1331 to make sure that student voices are heard with shared governance. And as well as with differential tuition. You know, this is an issue that students really came together beyond the University of Washington, also in Washington State University, and we've effectively repealed that. And now I'm very excited to go down to Olympia next year and continually work for that unity and bipartisanship.
And because you guys disagreed, we got to get you real quick.
Great. So I think that this question definitely lends itself to pointing out those bipartisan efforts that we have made this year. And I do agree that we have made some. However, earlier during this year, I actually met with the president of the College Republicans before he was on the other ticket. And we talked about this, and I really don't feel like that group has necessarily felt that they have been included in a lot of these advocacy efforts. So I think that what we have going right now is fantastic. But well, I'll stop there. That's great.
So back to agree or disagree. I trust the university administration to do its job effectively.
Student fees are too high.
All right, Daniel.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that definitely needs to be considered in terms of raising or if saying that student fees are too high. You know, we do a lot of good job here in terms of giving students the ability to, you know, be physically healthy with the IMA or to be here a part of the Husky Union building. Now, necessarily, there are a lot of factors that factor into those student fees. They're there for a reason, and I want to continue to work with our administration to set strong fees that actually, where students can effectively see where their money is going to.
And Michael, can we hear from you too, keeping in mind that ASUW is supported by student fees?
Of course. Yeah, and the thing that I want to agree with here is not necessarily the fees that are set by students, as we do have some level of control over those. But I think the thing that I would point to specifically is an online course fee at $350. That's much too high for what we're providing there. And I think as we move into more online and distance learning in the future, there's going to be a great opportunity to reduce and even eliminate that fee. So I think that's something we need to really point out when we're talking about fees.
Next question is, the experimental college can become a net zero enterprise.
I'd like to hear this one. Michael.
Great. If we're talking about what is possible, I definitely agree that we can work on the business model of the ASUW experimental college. That's something that our vice presidential candidate has committed to, Ada Welder, and I know that as we move towards the future and find what students really want out of the experimental college, that this is definitely a possibility and something we should always strive for.
All right, and last question of this round. On-campus safety is a bigger issue than off-campus safety.
Could you clarify what? Well, no, I'll just do this.
Okay. Thank you for your neutrality. Yes, sir. Okay, so I'm going to ask a follow-up for Daniel, especially because a major component of your platform this year and going into next year has been to increase LED lighting on campus, a major focus. I was wondering if you could explain your answer in that context.
Yeah. Thank you, Evan. You know, this year, the Committee on Student Safety released a survey that had over 900 different responses. That was quadruple the number of responses than last year. And what was pointed out was that there is a major safety component on campus, but students feel more unsafe off of campus. You know, this is why, as the chair committee on student safety, I'm very proud to announce that off-campus lighting will be improved with the help of the city of Seattle. And this is why on my platform, I'm working hard to make LED lights improved on campus.
All right, thank you guys. We're gonna move on to our second round of the debate, and that's moderator themes. The theme that we'll focus on for the next few minutes will be internal ASUW issues. So just to hear, each candidate will have 1-minute responses to questions, and the first person who answers, if you'd like to rebut the other person's answer, you have a rebuttal sign you can hold up, and we'll give you an additional 30 seconds. And we'll alternate each question who starts out, okay?
Point of information.
Yes.
How long do we get to answer the question if we
1
answer
minute.
first? Thank you.
Each 1 minute, and then a 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I think what you might have been asking is if Daniel takes a question, does it 1 minute, and I rebut with 30 seconds, can then I also answer the question with a minute?
You'll each get 1 minute to start out with. So
Yeah.
if I ask you a question, you get a 1-minute answer, then you get a 1-minute answer. If you want to respond, you get 30 seconds.
Great, okay, thank you.
So we'll try it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're all learning here.
Yeah.
All right, first question to Michael. What is one personal failure you've had as a member of the board this year?
One thing I would point to is a project that I worked on that I wouldn't necessarily call immediately a failure right away, but I worked on setting up a working group on TA support. And I feel that I could have actually taken on projects like this much earlier. I found that as I worked on this issue, that I found that it was extremely effective to engage students in specific policy proposals over a short period of time. I think that was kind of a new structure in terms of how we do our advocacy this year, and I would have liked to do more of those types of projects. Unfortunately, I was only able to get to one this year, and so next year I would like to encourage the members of our board to take on those types of sort of temporary initiatives that solve a problem on campus and do more of those throughout the year.
1 minute for you.
You know, I think this year as the Director of Community Relations, I came in with a lot of lofty goals. And one of my big goals was continue the advocacy work to improve student safety. Last year, with the past Director of Community Relations, they've done a lot of good work, and I wanted to continue working and making that progress. I think one thing I could have done to improve was convene the Committee on Student Safety earlier. This is why I really champion our Director of Community Relations goals of making sure that it is implemented sooner, because student safety is a priority here at the University of Washington. And I had heard from countless stories and have seen so many UW PD alerts that this is a growing issue. And one thing I want to continually work on next year is the implementation of LED lighting on campus. We've seen so much progress happen this year. I would hate, and I know the student body would also hate, to lose that forward momentum.
You guys have rebuttal signs, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let us know. So starting with Daniel, what's the president's role in responding to issues where one board member is being disrespectful to employees or volunteers?
To answer that question, in the event that a board member is being disrespectful, I think the first step is working with our working with the personnel director. You know, this is the person who is in charge of human resources within the office, and I think currently Amanda Anderson, our current personnel director, has really done a great job of this. We've seen a lot of contentious issues happen this year, especially with relationships between the board and the Senate, and I think that the personnel director has done a really great job. In addition to that, as a leader myself, I really think it's important to have the individual conversation between those that have issues. You know, we are a student government, but at the same time, we are friends too. And if there's anything that I really appreciate is that we can have feuds at the board table, but then at the end of the day, we can go over to Schultz's and grab a nice burger.
I'd love to think everyone at ASUW is my friend, but there might be some people that disagree. Michael?
So I think that the first step is being proactive and making sure that the relationships between board members is healthy throughout the year. That's something that I will make sure to do immediately, making sure that we are doing those kind of bonding efforts, like going to Schultz's and grabbing that burger, doing that right at the beginning of the year, so that we do foster healthy relationships that then can be addressed with credibility. So then if an issue does pop up, I think it would be important to, first of all, let the personnel director kind of handle it and step in. But if that issue does not get addressed over a period of time, then I think it would be appropriate for me to come in and make sure that the relationships between the board are healthy. So that's what that would be my policy, to make sure that the personnel director has that opportunity, but then stepping in if necessary.
Okay. Do you think that election spending limits are too high?
I think that this is me first, right? So I think that this is something we need to consider next year. We need to have an open discussion about what election spending limits are. I think that our current candidate for policy and procedures, Michael Zangel, has done a good job pointing out all the negative kind of externalities that we have when we have these high spending limits. So I think that's a conversation I would love to engage in, but that's a decision that I wouldn't want to come in and force on my own. That's a decision that I would want to have a vigorous debate at the board table and then come up with a solution as far as how we can address this. So that would be in general my philosophy in terms of these contentious discussions, is have vigorous debate at the board table, but then once we make a decision, once we make that decision, we need to then go with it. And then we need to sort of say that debate was enough and then move forward.
Do you think, you want to rebut? Okay, go ahead, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I haven't responded, so I want
Sorry,
to know.
my bad.
So I'm not rebutting, I'm answering the question.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Moderator mistake.
You know, just a few days ago on Monday, we had a forum at the Samuel E. Kelly Ethnic Cultural Center, and we had a really good discussion about really making the ASUW more accessible. We've done a lot of good work in terms of reviewing the elections policy procedures, getting rid of foods. And one thing that I want to look into next year is really looking into the implementation and having that conversation at the board table of lowering those campaign finances. As a little personal story about me, as a first-generation college student who's funded here on the Husky Promise, it is very difficult, and I am using my own scholarship money to run for this position. And you know, I want to recognize my own privilege here as a candidate and having the opportunity to study here at the University of Washington. So next year, to make ASUW more accessible, we really need to look at is if these these campaign finances are holding student leaders back from getting involved.
Next question is, do you think that students in ASUW elections vote based on substantive issues or personal relationships?
As the Director of Community Relations, personal relationships is my forte, and it's my job. I think something that's really important, it's a little bit of both. I do believe that student leaders listen and watch the actions of leaders who are currently in their position and really hold them accountable. Something I've done as the Director of Community Relations is really make sure that I'm at my community's meetings, at the Greek community, whether it be in residence hall or as well as within the residence halls as well. So building that personal relationship. And I really do believe that the students here at the University of Washington are personally invested in their student government. I think we could do a better job of reaching out to more students, and I think we've done that this year in terms of getting a lot more students to vote. Next year, I'm really looking forward to getting students voting as well, and more so having that good discussion of how to improve student engagement at the government level.
So I think what we need to do is make sure that the students of this campus are informed on the issues and informed as to what ASUW does for them. I do agree that there are a lot of students out there that will vote based on personal relationships. I do think that's valid though, because they're testing the credibility of the relationship that they have established with this person. And if they find them credible, then they're going to vote for them. That's pretty simple. But in terms of getting informed voters out there, what we need to do is make sure that we are actually taking on big and ambitious goals in this association, taking on goals that relate to a lot of students. Things like increasing the affordability of this education through more grants and scholarships for the middle class. and the working class. That's really important to me next year, and I think that when we do things that actually relate to all students, that's going to lead to a lot more informed voters, and that's going to lead to a lot of people understanding what ASUW does for them.
Great. All right, this one's near and dear to my heart. What do you think are the implications, what do you think the implications would be on your board if your ticket sweeps next year? Start with that.
So I'm happy to say that I've seen some of these implications. We managed to sweep the election last year. Daniel and I were on that Husky Impact green ticket. And so I think we did a really fabulous job this year as a board. There were some mistakes, there were some areas we could have improved, but ultimately we made some great accomplishments together. And we did push forward some really amazing things for the student body. Whether it's repealing differential tuition in the State House, moving forward the diversity requirement, or starting up those ASUW service days. So I think next year it does provide an opportunity for increased collaboration when you do sweep. Obviously I'm hoping for that. I chose the candidates on my ticket for a reason, and I believe that this is the best and most balanced and well-represented board that you can find out here, because we do take students from the residence hall community, from off campus, from Greek life, from athletics, and I could go on. I'm really excited about the team that I have, and I do hope we sweep.
Daniel?
I've also had the opportunity to share in those sentiments running with Husky Impact. And I think at the board level, we made a lot of progress, as well as recognizing some mistakes too. In terms of progress, I think we did a really good job of looking at our current board structure. This is why we have the Director of Service and Partnerships, really looking at areas that we can improve on. Our relationship with the Alumni Association, our relationship with external communities in terms of improving community service, as well as looking at our athletics. As the leader of this ticket, One Husky, I'm very excited and thrilled in knowing that when we put together our leadership, we really looked at what this university needed. And this is why when we put together champions and leaders from across the university, whether it be the Greek community, athletics, as well as off-campus, and even international students, we really took into the fact that this is what this students need, and this is also what the university needs. And I'll be very happy to also, once again, sweep.
Let's go. All right, thank you both. Another question here, and to be honest here, what is the greatest weakness of your ticket? Daniel, please.
All right. One of the greatest weaknesses of our ticket isn't not so much a weakness, but more so a leadership perspective. When we sat our leadership down together and we thought about what we were going to do, first off, let's talk about how we got our name. We came up with One Huskies because we believe that no matter what you're studying, no matter your living residence, no matter where you come from, at the end of the day, we are all one Husky. And I'm very proud to champion that, and students from across the university have also gotten behind this mission and this value too. One thing that can be seen as a weakness is that we're really big dreamers. You know, with our vice presidential candidate, having that growth. With our community relations candidate, really working to improve safety, diversity efforts, working to move diversity forward, service and partnerships. David has done an incredible work with our athletics and wants to continue moving that forward. I could go on and on with our candidates. Kyle Curtis and moving university forward. I'm running out of time, but I'm very excited.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm actually going to ask a follow-up question for you, and you'll get 30 seconds in response. Maybe I was wrong. I didn't hear too much of a weakness in the ticket. The one I heard was that you do dream big and you all think big, but I was wondering, are there any structural weaknesses in the candidates or the ticket as a whole?
Structural weaknesses. I think one thing that's really good about student leadership is that we also have the ability to grow. One thing that I see in our leadership is that we have strong experience, but there are other places at the university where we can grow as well. And that's getting involved in different organizations. And me, even as a current director of community relations, I've learned a lot in this job as well. And one thing that I think our ticket can do and has already been doing is learning how the ASUW functions as well as serving.
I honestly think that being able to identify weaknesses is really important as a leader. You need to be able to understand where you need to grow and where you need to learn coming into the next year. So I would like to recognize that we have some students on our ticket that have not necessarily been involved in ASUW before. Some might perceive that as a weakness, and it does come with some disadvantages. However, I'm going to also say this is a weakness as a strength, and take that side of things, in that we have some representation from students that know sort of how ASUW is perceived out in the community, out in the Greek community, out in the residence halls. And that's something that I'm really excited about. I was excited to get students on our ticket that didn't necessarily come from an ASUW background, because that will give them the perspective they need to make decisions on behalf of the entire student body. That's something I'm really excited about. So I do see that could be perceived as a weakness, but that's the other advantage of it, is that we'll have more perspective.
Okay, so theme 2 of the night is community and diversity.
All right.
So the first question to Michael is, are you satisfied with the diversity requirement proposal that passed out of the Faculty Senate?
I'll say that we did the best that we could. We got a requirement out there that does have a great definition for a diversity course. It really ended up being most of what the students wanted, but I know that a lot of people were not satisfied with the fact that it's only 3 credits. So that's an area that we're going to have to build upon, building upon that foundation that we have of a 3-credit requirement if it does get confirmed by the voting faculty. To have innovative ways to lower tuition, that's really important. However, I would want to see the other implications before I made a stand on that issue.
So a question for Michael. If all of our shared governance structures that we currently have were fully set up, fully functional as you think they can be, college councils and PACs, do you think it would really make a difference in terms of how the university spends money and tuition?
I'm going to start answering this question with a story. Last year, in the Provost Advisory Committee, they came to us with a proposal for an international student fee. This fee did not dictate exactly where it was going. It didn't say exactly how much money would be spent here or there. And we found that over a 1-week period, after talking a little bit with Phi Youth, that this was not a good proposal. And we eventually said that this is bad, and they took out that proposal last year and said that they needed to go rethink it. And I think that's a great example of how structures like the Provost Advisory Committee for Students can have dynamic responsiveness to administrative policy. It's really important that we have students that can know exactly where the university is headed, how the system works, and then be able to respond to those policy proposals very quickly. So that's what you get when you have shared governance, and that's what I'm committed to implementing even further next year.
I really do support the work that we've had in terms of improving shared governance and the implementation of college councils. And next year I want to continue that forward progress and making sure that all of our schools here at the University of Washington has a college council. Now this is really important. This is important because we need to have organized student leadership. This year we've seen time and time again where the student voice has not been heard in several issues. Now, next year, in the event that all of our college councils are organized and student voices are together, then that way we can make sure that our university at the student level is being heard.
Alrighty. Daniel, do you think that students should be advocating for a tax increase to fund higher education? And if so, how would you encourage the UW administration, which has long been hesitant to support tax increases, how would you encourage them to actually support an increase?
Can you repeat that question, Bill?
I can try. Do you think that students should be advocating for a tax increase to fund higher education? And if so, how will you encourage the UW administration to do that?
I think there's 2 things that we need to consider. I think first, we need to make sure that student voices are organized. And next year, as your ASUW president, I would like to work directly with our Office of Government Relations to create a clear vision in terms of making sure that student voices are heard at all the decision-making tables, as well as to directly answer that question. I do believe that students have a voice and a choice to make sure to create a solution that's best for the funding at the college level. So to answer that question directly, yes, they do have the responsibility of making sure that their voices are heard in terms of creating a tax structure that really and effectively implements a tuition model that is affordable for students.
There is no doubt in my mind that in order to fund higher education, we need new revenue. With the McCleary decision stating that the state of Washington has not funded the K-12 system by over something around $1 billion, there's no way we're going to raise money for higher education without new revenue. And honestly, one thing we need to be aware of here is that a tuition increase is a tax. It's a tax on middle and working class families. So that's something very crucial to remember in our advocacy efforts in Olympia. However, I would hope that we can come up with a tax structure, some sort of new revenue initiative that is not regressive, because the current tax structure in Washington is something like the most regressive in the entire nation, in that it affects lower class students more than really any other state. So I'm hoping that we can do this through closing tax loopholes, like maybe the B&O tax on businesses, those kind of things that are new revenue but don't bounce on the backs of people.
Nice one. Okay, Mr. Coots, this one goes to you first. Do you think that the University of Washington should close some academic or administrative units or programs to keep tuition low? If so, can you give us some examples?
This is an interesting conversation, honestly. A lot of the times the academic units that are proposed to be closed actually would cost money to close down. A lot of people say we should cut, I hope this doesn't happen, but people say like we should cut English because there isn't a great working market for that. I've heard that before. I think it's absurd because if you close down a program like that, that actually costs the university money because it's bringing in more revenue than it takes. So I think that when we're looking at these administrative units, these academic units, it's important to recognize that some of them don't actually raise revenue by closing. But this year, there was a very tough conversation in terms of what we should do with the future of UW-TV. And that was a really tough one. I don't have time, unfortunately, to really get into it. And I'm not sure if you'll ask me a follow-up question, but that was an interesting discussion too.
Well, as your ASUW president, I would ensure that the English major is not cut, as somebody who is currently an English major. My goodness, yeah. And to answer the question, my minor, the minor in diversity, was actually had the conversation. My advisor once upon a time told me that the diversity minor was in the process of getting cut, or there was a conversation of having it being cut. I agree in that, yes, it does take a lot of more money, and it wouldn't be necessarily effective for the University of Washington, but really, we need to make sure that students are having that conversation too. I think by the sheer fact that that conversation was a surprise to many students in the audience today is absurd. And this honestly is the first time we've heard of that conversation. So next year, as your ASUW president, I really want to make sure our director of university affairs, Kyle Curtis, is making sure that the student voices are engaged in those conversations.
30 seconds.
To be clear, this was no serious proposal. It's something that you hear people put up in like Seattle Times news comments. So that's not necessarily something that was proposed by the administration. I didn't necessarily feel the need to go alert students that people that are commenting on blog posts want to take down certain majors at the university.
All right. Just a reminder to the audience to submit your questions on Twitter. Keep that coming. We'll get to the Twitter sections very shortly.
What's the hashtag, Chris?
Is it ASUWPresidentialDebate?
Awesome.
Okay. You can tell I'm like a total Twitter person. Question to Daniel. What are your 3 policy goals for the next legislative session?
Can you repeat that question, Chris?
What would be your 3 policy goals for the next legislative session?
3 policy goals that I'd like to focus on next year with the legislative session is the first, we want to continue the work that we've done with differential tuition. We made a lot of forward progress in terms of it, passing it out of the House, and we're hopefully looking forward to it passing eventually with the passing of the budget, or the decision made on the budget. The second thing that I also want to do is I really want to work with our Office of Government Relations in looking at first off, really ending the conversation of whether or not we should have a surcharge on international students. So creating that type of legislative directive and making sure that students know that we're not pricing international students out of the university. And the second is continuing the process of the Washington State DREAM Act. I think we made a lot of forward progress in terms of this, and I want to make sure that students have more accessibility here at the university.
So there are three things I would outline. The first, bringing in more diverse issues into our advocacy efforts. We did have some great efforts around the Washington State DREAM Act, and I'd like to make sure that's passed next year. And I think that the fact that our Director of Diversity Efforts candidate, Monica, worked on that issue will give us a lot of success there. The second is increasing the amount of aid that we're able to offer the working class students. I really hope that we can come together and launch an aggressive student-led campaign to increase aid for those students. And the third is actually coordinating more with faculty and administration, graduate students, and undergrads for a coordinated university-wide push for new revenue for higher education. I sat down in a great conversation this year where we actually started that process, where we met all together as one kind of group. We came out with some great ideas, and it's time to increase the collaboration on the areas that we agree upon, which is that we need more money for higher education.
All right, the last question of this section before fact check, so get those questions by Twitter in. Do you think that UW Athletics should contribute more to the academic mission of the university? Michael.
Another interesting question. Here we have a situation at this university where athletics does raise their own revenue. However, we do tax some of that out of that unit and then put it into our academic mission. So we do pull some money from those units, and that does fund some of our academic mission, but I think it would be great if we could really consider if that is the appropriate level for the tax. That's something that we have started to look into, but we really haven't investigated fully, and I think that's a good conversation to have next year. The second is making sure that athletics is engaged as an administrative unit in our campus experience. We need to expand the Dog Pack Scholarship Program, where we offer tickets to students to the Dog Pack that can't necessarily afford it on their own and want to have that experience. So I think it started out at about 20 tickets, and we can do a lot more with that.
Bill, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was, do you think UW Athletics should contribute more to the academic mission of the university?
I think UW Athletics has definitely done a lot of great work here at the University of Washington, and I think that we can constantly improve on that. This is why the current board of directors created the position of Director of Service and Partnerships. Now, I like to work directly with David Weingarten, who has an immense amount of experience working with UW Athletics by working with the football team and in many other capacities as well. To answer the question, I think that we have seen a lot of progress in terms of having their representation at WASAC, but I also think that in terms of having their representation at the board level, this is also paramount first. And so as ASUW president, I want to make sure that we continue that investigation of looking to see if athletics can contribute more in that fashion.
Thank you very much, candidates. That concludes that section, and we'll now proceed to the fact check section. So loosen your ties, drink some water. This is going to be fun. So to define this, the moderators will be focusing on asking a specific candidate questions for a period of time up to 5 minutes per candidate. I'll be keeping, our clock will be going down there, and we'll begin with Michael. Okay.
Hit me.
Yes, yeah, you. So a major component of your campaign and part of your platform has been an expansion of financial aid for the middle class. Do you have any suggestions or tangible ideas for how we're going to afford this expansion of financial aid to the middle class?
Of course. The first thing that we're going to do is seek to benefit from the university's capital campaign, which will raise money from private donors and investors. The second is looking for funding from the state. I really want to elaborate on that first point because I think that's one of our best opportunities. Next year and over the next coming years, the university is going to be kicking off a capital campaign, which in the past has raised about $25 million per month from private donors and investors. They've asked us to join the table with them as far as what the priorities should be for that capital campaign next year. And I think when we come together and launch an aggressive campaign to say that students need this to go to more grants and scholarships for the working class, that will be immensely effective in getting money towards those students and making sure that we can reduce the cost of education for those students.
If I could ask a follow-up, I've studied this quite a bit. Capital campaigns of this size typically take over the course of a decade to accrue that kind of money. And obviously the state legislature is about 20,000 folks underserved that are in the lower class or the lower income levels. And on campus, to raise money for this kind of financial aid, this usually involves a tuition increase. So next year, for tangible efforts, how do you see in your presidency next year, how would you work to get this goal achieved next year?
Yes. So I think I touched on it. It's going to be about using those same techniques we used this year to repeal differential tuition in the State House, where we go and present to a lot of different campus groups that this is a major issue and policy point for us in the association, and that builds awareness of this issue. And when we have a really strong student voice saying that we need funding from that capital campaign towards our working and middle class, then that's going to be really effective. I think that's what you were getting at with that question. That's the technique that we're going to be using.
So we'll keep you on the hot seat. In your platform last year, you promised to ensure that access to a UW education is not sacrificed in order to raise faculty salaries. However, at the UW, just as a few examples, Professor Sekhar is our highest paid professor at $547,000 a year. Professor Reyes,
what department?
I don't know the department.
Okay.
But it's $521,000. The average salary is $124,254, compared to the median family in Washington of about $55,000. Do you support a tuition increase to fund faculty salaries this year?
So I would imagine that Professor Sekhar is probably in the UW Medicine, which actually is largely funded through their sort of business side of things. So that's kind of an interesting point there. But there are obviously faculty that are paid probably too much. But there are mostly faculty out there that are paid relatively too little. That's why in the ASUW Student Senate this year, we passed a resolution supporting state-funded faculty salary increases. And if there was no state funding for those, there would be a faculty salary increase with a minimal impact on tuition. That's what students supported, and that's what students wanted. And as the Provost Advisory Committee chair, I made sure that we analyzed the UW budget for how we could increase faculty salaries and the wage freeze over the past 4 years with a very minimal impact on tuition. And we found a way to do that with a 3% resident undergraduate tuition increase, a 1% non-resident tuition increase. And I think as we proposed that to the Student Senate yesterday, students were largely in support of using money to go towards faculty salaries.
All right, I'm going to play it back out here. Michael, how do you feel, or how do you think that your University Affairs candidate's recent decision to resign from the RHSA Executive Board prior to campaigning will reflect his ability to serve students on the Board of Directors next year, as well as work with the RHSA?
Of course. I think Jeff's done some amazing advocacy work in the RHSA. I got the opportunity to collaborate with him on a project to increase, or actually to move some of the sandwiches that are in Bay Laurel cafes and that are excess over to local food banks. And that was an interesting project that we took on. The administration wasn't very responsive on it, but I had a great time working with him, and that's one of the reasons why I chose him for Director of University Affairs. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to go into the personal decision-making process that he went through to make that decision, but I can assure you that from seeing his work this year while he was in that position and from seeing his work as a committee chair in the Student Senate, that he'd be a fantastic Director of University Affairs.
Okay, we've got 10 seconds left, but we will let you take a break now as we've run out of questions. All right, and we'll move on now. We'll begin with this question first. You said last year in your platform that you wanted to establish a stronger relationship with the Washington Student Athlete Advisory Council and the ASUW. How have you accomplished this goal?
So, making sure that WASAC, that's the acronym, and having that relationship built, first by attending their meetings and having that conversation. And the second, what I'm really proud of the current board of directors in doing, that I was helping in making that decision as well, is looking at the implementation of the current, the Director of Service and Partnerships. Now this directly would be somebody who would be working with WASAC in improving athletics, alumni, as well as improving community service efforts.
Explain the bike shop's major successes this year and how you hope to further these successes in coordination with your VP.
So, the main reason why I chose Alex Fraser to run, besides his dashing good looks, in addition, is the fact that Alex has not only knowledge from working with the current finance and budget director and serving on the finance and budget committee, but he's also somebody who focuses his educational efforts as a business major. Now, to answer the question of how to improve the forward progress of the bike shop, I really have to applaud the work that the bike shop has done. They're an entity that has raised a lot of revenue, as well as seen a lot of progress within their entity, especially being their first year back in the hub. One thing I want to continually work with Alex in doing, our vice presidential candidate, is continue that forward growth and really making sure that students know about this service so they can continually use this entity.
I asked a tough question to Michael, I'm going to do the same to you, Daniel. Speaking of your vice presidential candidate, Alex was hired last year as the EXCO assistant director and quickly resigned thereafter for an internship. Do you have any personal concerns about his commitment to the association next year?
Bill, I want to be clear. Not at all. The fact that Alex, like you said in his introduction, once again, dedicating himself to commit to the student body and running to serve in this leadership position shows so much resilience and also character. And the fact that he wanted personally to improve his knowledge through an internship is something that's really impressive. And I think this is something that he's gained a lot of skill in and something where he can continually take those skills into the vice presidential role, making him a very, very strong candidate because in addition to the goal setting of the vice president is creating the budget as well. And this is where I know Alex is very strong in.
Okay, next question. Last year, you ran on a platform of using your background to make the University of Washington a united community that will continue to serve all students and create successful, high-achieving scholars. After your year of service as Director of Community Relations, is the campus united? And beyond rhetoric, is campus unity even possible?
Coming from my background, as a first-generation underrepresented student here at the University of Washington, funded only possible through Husky Promise, I found it incredibly challenging to enter the University of Washington, feel the need to get involved, as well as serve. And this is why I primarily ran, along with your ticket, I think. And one thing that I've done this year is really build bridges between the residence hall students as well as the Greek community and beyond, and working with students who commute as well with the help of first-year programs and the commuter commons, and making sure that I was there presenting to student government 101s and really ensuring that students know how to get involved. So that way, students don't have to be like me when they came onto the University of Washington campus, had a passion to serve, but didn't. And so now, this year, do I think unity is achievable? Absolutely. This is why I like to create and introduce the Husky Leadership Forum. And this is where we would take leadership from across different communities, residence halls, Greek community, as well as establish leadership within the commuter community to have open, accessible leadership here at the University of Washington that will be really dedicated to creating community service opportunities as well as seek programming never before seen on this campus. And I think I've done a really incredible job of uniting this campus and making sure that students know that their voices are heard. And as your ASUW president, I like to continue that work.
So there are no students that will opt out of this campus unity? Everybody's capable of coming together?
With my last 20 seconds, I do believe that students at the University of Washington genuinely feel the interest in getting involved. The first thing is that student government needs to reach out to students first. And this has been seen by me being out in the community and working within these different community groups on issues such as differential tuition, Meany Hall, and improving safety. It's really about tackling issues that are relevant to students.
Okay, it's Twitter time. So we got some questions from the audience, and we're going to go through a couple of those. We'll do back to the other format where you guys have a minute each.
Do we also have the ability to rebuttal?
Yeah, 30. So this one's from @JGibbs206. I have no idea.
Who's that?
Somebody watching on CNN did. So her question is, there's been a lot of talk about diversity tonight. How would you define it?
Who's first? I think diversity is recognizing the differences that we may have as a student body and how we can appreciate those differences, learn from them, and then move forward towards a broader campus community. I had a wonderful opportunity this year to work on the diversity requirement. That was a project that I got to work through my seat as the faculty on the Faculty Council on Academic Standards. And I can tell you that this question was asked many times, and we came to sort of a definition that I think worked. And that was really about appreciating those differences that we have. It was really about recognizing that some people come to the table with more privilege, with more power than others. And we need to make sure that we recognize it, that we are aware of the differences in power that we have as a student body and as students, and the effect of institutions on that power and on marginalization as well.
Thank you for that question, at jgibbs206. You know, the word diversity is very important. And first I want to say, I want to recognize my own power, my own privilege. As somebody who has the ability to study at a world-class university, as well as somebody who's serving as the current Director of Community Relations, it's really an honor and truly a blessing. What diversity means to me is really a multitude of things. It's not only class, gender, sex, race, but really the appreciation of our differences. You know, this is why personally I've chose to be a diversity minor. And I've had the opportunity to travel abroad to Ethiopia as well as Vietnam and really get that diverse understanding of different cultures. And really more so, a great learning experience has been working with Christine Marmont, our candidate for Director of Diversity Efforts, and really giving me an opportunity to see the needs of international students as well. And next year I'm committed to making sure that those voices are heard.
All right, this question comes in from @BurdenMolly of approximately 14 minutes ago. It's, what community do you see yourself identifying with the least, and why? And how do you plan to ensure this community is represented? Starting with Daniel.
Thank you for that question, Bill. One community that I believe that I haven't had the opportunity to work directly with is students with disabilities. You know, this year we have seen an incredible opportunity with the opening of the D Center over in Mary Gates Hall. I really encourage every student there to go out and really be a part of that space and talk with the members of that community. I also want to recognize my own privilege in that sense. And next year, as the ASUW president, I'd really like to work with our Director of Community Relations candidate, Stephen Doe, to ensure that not only are those student voices being represented at the Board of Directors table, but ensuring that that space is known to students that are incoming on campus.
Daniel, I just want to quickly follow up. Last year in your platform, when you ran for Director of Community Relations, one of your points was work closely with the Student Disability Commission in order to advocate for student accessibility and community improvements for students with disabilities. Would you say you've accomplished that this year?
I would say that I've done a lot of good work in terms of working with that community, and I'm really, once again, blessed with the fact that this university has the D Center. One thing that I like to continually do is, now that that center is open for students, to make sure that students know about that center so they can actively engage and be a part of that space for those students.
Do you remember your question?
Yeah. So one community that I would say I don't represent is the international student community at this university. I'm from Redmond, and so I would not count as an international student. And one thing that I've found is that a lot of times we haven't really built the structures quite yet to have representation from international students on a lot of the issues that directly affect them. So this year in Student Senate, we talked about the international student fee, which we ended up supporting, but one question that I asked was, to the sponsor or to the administrator that was there, was, did you reach out directly to international students, and do you know exactly how they felt about this fee? And currently we have the Phi Youth Student Advisory Board, but unfortunately this administrator had not reached out to those groups, so I think we need to create stronger structures for representation for that community of students.
Thank you. Next question is submitted from Calla Kate. So we wonder who that is. The question is for both of you, starting with Michael. What do you see as the biggest personal challenge you will have to overcome in order to serve as an effective president?
So this year, in a lot of my advocacy efforts, and specifically in one instance, I got the opportunity to kind of work on my own goals and my own visions and really directly manage those. So when I formed the working group on TA support, I got to really work on that as kind of my own unit. However, once you enter the presidency, you are managing so many different projects that there is no way that you can micromanage each one of those. And so that's something that will be different from my current position. That's something that I think would be slightly different from my current position, in that I'll have to expand my ability to sort of delegate out to people as far as the different goals we have for the association, and making sure that I'm not taking over any of these projects, but that we're giving students the opportunity to lead.
Thank you for the question. As the current Director of Community Relations, I have had an amazing opportunity to work with so many unique communities across campus, represent their voices at the board level, as well as make sure that they are represented at every decision-making table. Going into the role of ASUW President, it's very difficult for the ASUW President to continually be a face for the community. And this is something that's really important, and I've seen great work that's been done in that fashion this year, but something I'd like to continue on next year. I know that in this position, there'll be many meetings with the regions. I know that there are going to be many different meetings with different community groups that aren't effective, that aren't with the students here at the UW. And one thing that I want to continue on improving is having that face for the association, as well as the university.
Next question is from @LukePicking. How would you work with GPSS, UW Tacoma, UW Bothell, and the student region to promote the undergraduate voice on the Board of Regents?
Thank you for that question. Do you mind repeating it?
How would you work with GPSS, UW Tacoma, UW Bothell, and the student region to promote the undergraduate voice on the Board of Regents?
I'm really glad that question was asked tonight, because it gives me an opportunity to really talk about our tri-campus efforts that have been progressed this year, and as well as something I want to continue next year. With tri-campus having UW Bothell and UW Tacoma coming together, whether it be on the Bothell campus, Tacoma campus, or here in Seattle, making sure that they have representation and really talk about issues that are relevant to students. This year, we talked about the diversity requirement and have really made forward progress on that. At UW Seattle, we've definitely made more progress than UW Bothell and UW Tacoma, and I think that's why we need to continue having that representation. Now, making sure that the UW student, the student region is at those conversations, and really making sure that their voices are represented at that region level.
One thing that I saw this year that was a positive development is, first of all, that the student regent came to my meetings at the Provost Advisory Committee for Students, so I was happy about that. But I think we could work on having the student regent be at the Provost Advisory Committee even more and helping with the agenda setting there. Because one positive development we had was that, Chris, and happy birthday, you started setting the agenda for the Board of Regents with the undergraduate and graduate perspective in mind. So I think that's something that I would hope would be transitioned on to the next student region, to make sure that not only is the student region coming to our main meetings where they can see the representation from ASUWT, ASUWB, GPSS, and ASUW, but also bringing that voice to the Board of Regents and actually setting the agenda in a way that represents the students on this campus.
Our second to last question, our last Twitter question, comes in from Kia. It's, being an engineering student, I would be affected by differential tuition, but I do think it's fair. Would you propose a differential tuition financial aid dispersal?
Could you explain what a differential tuition financial aid
I think financial aid within differential tuition majors, how would you go about doing that, I suppose is the question.
Okay, so that was actually part of the proposal for differential tuition this last time around. I mean, it didn't fully develop, but it was always talked about that there would be financial aid included with differential tuition, but I don't think this is a good route to go down for this university, because ultimately there's two things. That's, first of all, a high tuition, high aid model that we have historically not been in support of as an association. And the second thing is that it really silos this community, this university, into differential channels of opportunity, where some students have the chance to major in engineering and business, and they have the freedom to choose those with their financial background. And other students may not, because you're not going to be able to implement a financial aid system from differential tuition that's going to effectively make that affordable for all students. That's what we found this year, and that's why we took it to the State House and repealed it there.
Yeah, I'm glad that question was asked, because a majority of the time we don't get to hear the other perspective in terms of whether students really are in favor of differential tuition, especially as an engineer student, which it would impact greatly. In terms of looking at financial aid for students who would like, in this current scenario, like differential tuition, we can see that it doesn't work. We have, historically, I agree that we don't support a high aid, high tuition model. And one thing that we can focus on next year, the one thing that we focused on this year is really repealing differential tuition. This is why in our ASUW Student Senate, we voted against it. This is why myself, as well as the ASUW president, went down to Olympia to advocate against it, even though the University of Washington administration was in favor of it. And I'm very proud of the success it's had in the House, and I'm really hoping that it passes with the passing of the budget as well.
Okay. One more Twitter question from @HugeWizard. Which just brings to mind this great image of the huge wizard, big Dumbledore. So the question is, can you candidates speak on the relationship and history of KUOW, KEXP, and Rainy Dog Radio, and the role that plays on a college campus?
I think those radio stations are incredibly important. And what's unique about our university is that we have a radio station. I know that in the past there have been budget proposals that would cut Rainy Dog Radio, and that is something I absolutely stand against. I think Rainy Dog Radio serves a great purpose, as well as KUOW and KEXP, because it gives an opportunity for students to engage in that type of interest in a way that they have never before. And honestly, serving as a first-year program's orientation leader and welcoming in thousands of incoming students, serving as a face for our university, it made me so happy to know that we have a radio station where students can directly engage in that interest and really promote their passion, whether it be music or even in the field of radio DJing. So I want to continually make sure that that entity is strong with the help of our vice presidential candidate, Alex Fraser.
So it wasn't necessarily in my job description this year to work directly with Rainy Dog Radio, nor would it be in my immediate job description to be a liaison to Rainy Dog Radio as president. However, I can say that I would support more collaboration between the services that we offer here at ASUW and the services that are out in the community. One proposal that we recently saw is that the experimental college is interested in finding more advertising from local radio stations like KEXP and KUOW. And I think that it's great to build those partnerships with the community. That's why we created the Director of Service and Partnerships, because we saw that there's an opportunity with this association to increase our presence in the community and increase the resources that we are able to benefit from for our services and for our advocacy.
Last question of the night.
Oh no.
I know, you guys you've been doing a marathon and you're almost over the finish line.
I'm out of water too, so.
What is the single biggest thing that contrasts you and makes you a stronger candidate than your opponent?
All right, we're getting personal here.
So I think one of the biggest aspects of the presidential job description is to lead the on and off-campus advocacy efforts of ASUW. In order to do that effectively, you need to make sure that you understand these policies, that you understand what's been done before, and that you understand what hasn't worked. You need to know the techniques that are effective for on-campus advocacy versus the techniques that might be more effective for on-campus advocacy. That's a particular advantage that I believe I have is something that I've proven in that I was a leader in the repeal for differential tuition in our efforts in Olympia, and that I was also a leader in our efforts to move forward the diversity requirement here on campus. So I think that's probably the biggest advantage that I bring to this position, and that's something that I would really commit to next year, so we can actually make meaningful change at this university, increase the affordability of this education, and really make an impact and unleash that Husky potential.
You know, first I just want to say that at times these debates and these races can at times be very contentious, and I want to say it's been an honor to work alongside Michael this year. And one thing that I think has been a dramatic difference between us two is my focus on working with the students at the University of Washington in the different communities too. We can see these in the endorsements that we've had in the past with the Residence Hall Student Association as well as the Interfraternity Council. And I think coming into the role as ASUW president, it needs to have a more community face, as well as being able to work with different communities. In addition to working with the Director of Community Relations, you know, making sure that students have visibility of the ASUW president. That way, students can effectively engage in making sure that their voices are heard at the decision-making table.
All right. Oh, rebuttal, 30 seconds, Michael.
I'd like to just comment on community building because I really do believe that's an important aspect of the role. I think community building is about building face-to-face relationships. It's about building those relationships that will increase collaboration throughout the year. That's why we've proposed the Husky Leadership Retreat. That's going to bring together RSO and community leaders from across campus, and that's going to increase the interconnectedness of this community. That's something that we can really benefit from, and I think that's something that's going to increase the connection between ASUW and RSOs that hasn't necessarily existed before.
So there's no rebuttals to rebuttals, Daniel. But I
That's
appreciate
a
that
to my response, I think, right?
What? It goes against the rules. We're going to continue.
I'll let
That
moderators-
ends moderator questions, potpourri Twitter. We'll now proceed to candidate conclusions. So each one of you will be given 2 minutes for a concluding statement, and we will begin with Daniel.
First off, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to us speak for over an hour and a half. And I really want to thank ASUW and EAC for putting, as well as the ASUW Voices, for putting together this opportunity for student leaders to share their vision. The Associated Students of the University of Washington is the democratic voice of students that engages campus communities. The ASUW strives, in programming, services, and advocacy, the ASUW strives to enrich student life as well as develop student leaders. This is the mission that's written right inside the ASUW in paint that I believe in. And when I came to the University of Washington, I admit that I was so passionate to get involved after serving as ASB president back at Franklin High School, like our vice presidential candidate talked about. But honestly, I didn't get involved because honestly, it was very difficult for me in terms of not being reached out to. And then when UW Leaders eventually opened its doors and having that opportunity to work with ASUW, it has given me a wealth of information as well as knowledge and passion to serve this university. And this is something that I'm not done doing yet. I'm here to serve, but more so, I'm excited to lead. And this is why I truly believe that together as one, our voices will be heard. And together as one, our unity will make an impact. I'm Daniel Nguyen, ready to serve as your ASUW president. And together as one, we will become one Husky. Thank you again so much. It's truly been an honor. And good night.
Michael, please continue with your concluding statement.
In my 3 years of involvement in ASUW, I have found this to be true. That when we work together, when we organize ourselves, when we present clear and cogent cases for meaningful ideas for students, there is no end to the impact that we can make as a student body. This is our time. This is the unprecedented opportunity that we have been waiting for so long, where it seems like the conversation in Olympia is moving away from divestment in higher education. where we can start talking about finally relieving our working class of the burden that they have carried for so long to keep this university afloat. Hear me on this. Financial aid is more than saved dollars. It's freedom. It's what liberates our students from taking on that second job that has that pain for their grades and campus experience. For some of us, it's our protection from taking on an inescapable load of student debt. Every penny stolen from higher education is a dollar taken from the economy in the future. We need to stop this trend that we have been seeing, where Olympia is balancing its budget on the backs of students and calling that financial responsibility. That is not responsibility, that is recklessness. Public education is our gateway to opportunity in this state. And I will make sure that that is clear in our advocacy efforts in Olympia next year. But I believe that the student voice will prevail. We prevailed in our efforts to repeal differential tuition. We prevailed in our efforts to move forward the diversity requirement, a 25-year student project. And we literally wrote a bill and passed it in the State House. Those accomplishments give me hope. They are what make me sure that we will redefine the student influence and unleash the Husky potential. Again, my name is Mike.
Huge shout out to both of our presidential candidates. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our 3 moderators for an incredible evening. And thank you to the Voice and the Elections Administration Committee for holding tonight's debate.